Warning: Tentacle Bento is a tongue-in-cheek card game featuring many tropes from Japanese anime. If you have never watched anime before or have been exposed to Japanese culture, Tentacle Bento has the potential to blow your mind. Viewer discretion is advised.
Welcome, alien invaders, to the Tentacle Bento tutorial. Tentacle Bento is a anime-themed card matching game for 2 to 6 players. To start the game, you'll take the single deck of 100 plus cards and deal 7 cards to each player. If you're playing with just 2 players, then both players will get 13 cards. After you've dealt everyone their hands, check to make sure that you don't have any event cards. Event cards are cards with black borders around them and exclamation marks in the upper left corner. The main mechanic of this game is to perform captures, and each capture would be worth a number of points at the end of the game. To perform a capture, you need 3 things: a location, a student, and a capture card. And there are 4 suits of cards in the game, denoted by their color. From left to right here we have sexy, sporty, cute, and smart. So once everyone has their cards and none of them are event cards, if you have to have an event card in your hand at the very beginning of the game, you will reshuffle that card back into the deck and draw a new card. Once everyone has their hand, you will flip the top card of the deck and place it face up, side by side. So the deck of cards here is known as the school pile, and the pile that gets drawn face up here is known as the field pile. You then place the direction of play card beside both those piles or within easy view of everyone else, and that is the turn order. The turn will start beginning clockwise, and there are effects during the game that can change the order of play to counterclockwise, but it starts clockwise. So before we go about how exactly you start your turn and perform your actions, let's get into detail about the 2 types of captures that you can do. The first is a sloppy capture, which means a single location, a single student, and a single capture card, and they can be of any suit. They can be purple, green, red, purple, red, different colors. And that is a successful capture. Or you could do a capture all of the same suit. In this example here, I have a purple location, a purple student, and a purple capture. And that is known as a noble capture. When doing a noble capture, you have a few options here. You can put between 1 and 3 students while you're doing the capture. And in later turns, if you happen to draw a student matching this suit, you can then put them into the pile afterwards. But I'll get into how that works in a moment. After you do a noble capture, you then resolve what's known as a mayhem. Each suit has a different mayhem associated with them. If you do a sexy noble capture, the player who's made it can then take 1 card at random from any opponent's hand. If you do a noble capture using all smart cards, you then turn over the direction of play card so that it's now the opposite direction. If you do a noble capture using all cute cards, each player will then pass 1 card from their hand to the next player in the direction of play. And if you do a noble capture using all sporty cards, that player may then take a card from any position in the field pile and place it into their hand. So during your turn, after you perform any captures or once you're about ready to finish your turn, you will take 1 card from your hand and place it face up into the field pile. And the turn will proceed in the direction of play. So now we can get into what's really the big twist factor here. When it's your turn, you have the option of drawing a card from multiple different areas of the game. You can draw 1 card from the top of the deck, add it to your hand without anyone knowing, and then you can proceed to do any captures that you would like if you have the appropriate cards. Or, instead of that, you can take the top card from the field pile and then perform any captures etc., etc. Or you can take any card from the field pile, but you must take every card that is then above that card. So, for example, if we're going down the line of playing the game, and now there's a bunch of cards on this field pile, and the player's turn, they decide, I really want this card, so I will take this card, but I also have to take the 2 cards that are on top of it. And when I do this, the card that I really wanted to take must be played immediately as a part of a noble capture. So that player would then have to say, alright, well, I took that card and now it has to be a part of a noble capture. And because it is a purple noble capture, I can place more than one student in the pile. And that would be a successful resolution of that draw and noble capture. And then you would resolve its mayhem effect. So as I mentioned, in multiple turns, or in subsequent turns, the game will progress, and it's possible at a later time to draw another card of that same suit. If this player finds another character that could go in that suit, let's say during their turn they say, alright, my turn, and I'm just going to do a sloppy capture. There you go. But I'm also going to add room for one more here and put another girl in my previously played noble capture, so that at the end of the game this is now worth 3 points and this is still worth 1. It's a way to make, because there are more student cards in the deck than there are of locations and captures, it's a way to increase the worth of your piles while not using as many cards. And it's also a good way to get rid of cards in your hand, because at the end of the game you score points based on how many students you've captured minus how many students you still have in your hand. The last way that you can draw a card is if you're in a tight spot and you don't really have any cards and you think that drawing 1 card wouldn't be enough. You can instead draw 3 cards. But at that point, you must end your turn. But you don't have to discard a card at the end of your turn and place it into the field pile. But this rule also doesn't prevent you from adding 1 more to a noble capture that you already have. So it's a good way to put in 3 cards in your hand to get some more options and not have to discard a card at the end of your turn. So those are the basic mechanics of the game. On your turn, you draw, you place any captures, as many as you want, as long as you have the appropriate number of cards. You resolve their mayhem effects, if any, and then you discard a card and end your turn. But there are also 3 types of special cards in this game. One are events, the second are all-star students, and the third are characters. So if at any point you draw an event, you immediately stop everything you're doing and you resolve the event. You place it face up here so that everyone can see, and every player will resolve the effects on the card in the direction of play. So this example, this card says, any player with a sporty student in their hand must immediately place it in the field. Once everyone resolves that, then the turn goes back as it was. Once 4 event cards have been discovered, the game is over. Upon drawing the 4th card, you don't resolve its effects. The game is immediately over and players will start to score their piles. So event cards, there are 4 of them in the game, and they determine how long the game lasts. So once you see 3 event cards in the pile, it's probably wise to start wrapping up all your students so that once the 4th card is drawn, you have the most points at the end of the game. So the second type of unique card here is an all-star student. They work just like normal students. They can be captured and they have special effects for when they do. In order to capture an all-star student, it must be a noble capture. So in this case, this student must be at a green location with a green capture card. Also, although it's a noble capture, it can be the only student that you capture during this. So even if, let's say, I had another green student here, I couldn't also place her within this capture. In subsequent turns, I can then put a card there, but on the first turn, on the first time you capture the student, you cannot do that. So after you've captured this student, instead of resolving the normal mayhem effect, you resolve the all-star student's effect. And this card in particular says you place all girl cards on the target opponent's capture pile to the field, and then you return that player's capture and location cards to their hand. So these students are pretty powerful. They can really change a player's capture piles and influence who wins the game. But also, at the end of the game, when you're scoring your piles, a all-star student is worth 5 points. So they are incredibly valuable. And lastly, we have characters. Characters don't get captured. Instead, characters can be played during your turn at any point, so long as it's before you discard a card, because once you discard a card, your turn is over. But when you'd have to look at each character in specific to resolve what their effects are. However, you can play it at any point. So during your turn, before you draw, you say, okay, I'm gonna play this character card, and I'm gonna resolve its effect. And this one in particular says that you place the custodian on any opponent's capture file. This pile cannot score any points while the custodian is present, and at the end of the turn that the controlling player who has the custodian in their pile, once they make a sloppy capture, that player may then move the custodian to another opponent's capture pile. So that's a singular pile. It's not, within that player's field. So you can say, wow, you've played an all-star student, that's going to be worth 5 points for you. I am going to make that worthless to you until you make a sloppy capture. And, depending on how the game's going, that player may not be in a good position to make a sloppy capture, or it really wastes cards in their hand. There are a lot of unique characters in the base game here that can change the effects dramatically. So at the end of the game, once that 4th event card is drawn, you score your piles. Each student is worth 1 point, and each all-star student is worth 5, minus the number of students you have in your hand. So in this example, I've got 5, I've got 1, minus 3, I've scored 3 points because of this. And then you simply count up who has the most points. So that's Tentacle Bento. It's a very simple game of matching suits to colors and getting the aha moment on your opponents. If you have any questions, you can always send me a tweet at cynicallyawesome minus the E on Twitter, or send me an email at cynicallyawesomegames@gmail.com. That's it, and thanks for watching.